Welcome back to the Breaking Bias podcast. I'm your co-host, Molly, and I'm joined by my incredible co-host, as always, Dr. Obbs. Hello, Obbs. How are you? It has been a minute, but we have lots in store today.
That's right, Molly. It's been a minute. I'm doing well. The sun is
Yay.
shining here in Houston. It is hotter than the devil's crotch. We are
Same
already in Houston in the dead of summer in May.
Yeah, I know.
But
hot. It's humid.
We've had lots of racing,
Yes.
which is nice. We had a really good, very active weekend of racing. I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we've got the lead up for the Indy 500 going on with kind of the qualifying drama with the Penske attenuator modifications and all of that, and some penalties that were levied, which I was quite pleased to see actually get levied.
Should we talk about that?
Sure.
Let's jump into it. Let's just jump right into the drama.
Yeah. So for those unaware, the way Indy 500 qualifying is split is Saturday. If you are in the top 30, you are in the race, you're in the show. One through however many cars there are, you have to do what's called last chance qualifying, and then the top 12 move on to fast 12 and then qualify for pole on Sunday. So when fast 12 rolls around on Sunday, all of a sudden news starts to kind of filter around that Joseph Newgarden's car failed tech, and then all of a sudden Will Power's car gets pulled from qualifying, and they were working on Will's car on pit road. And so there was a lot of confusion, and it turns out that the inspection team saw a body seam on Joseph's car around the attenuator, which is part of the safety crash structure of the rear of the car. That was something they were, air quotes, not pleased with. And it turns out that Penske was filling that seam essentially to try and reduce the effects of the seam on the car's aero. Will's car had the same thing, but it was they let it through tech, and they apparently told Will Power's team, we're going to let you through, you can qualify, but you're going to fail post-race for that. And so the third Penske car that was in the top 12, Scott McLaughlin, allegedly did not have the seam modification, but he wrecked his car, so he was not present in qualifying. So this kind of kicked off all of this drama of, well, why did an illegal car get rolled out to pit lane anyway? Why did they let that car roll out and go effectively what would be go for qualifying attempt? Why did they not catch this before, right? And it begs
has it been there all along?
Yeah, which allegedly it has. It has been there for at least a year, because the 2024 car that is on display, frozen in time, has the attenuator seam filled. Because if you are familiar with Roger Penske, he does not do a show car when he preserves a car. He takes it as is. That's it. That car is out of circulation and running. And so Joseph's car is in the museum, and it has the attenuator seam filled. And so it kicked off a lot of drama and a lot of questions around Fox watching the hen house of IndyCar, because Roger Penske owns the series, owns the track, owns a team. Also owns Ilmor, who is the provider of the Chevrolet engines for IndyCar. So there is a lot of renewed discussion around the Fox watching the hen house in IndyCar, and how did this get through on the tech inspection team. And a lot of people are mad, I think, at like Roger and the series. And I think Doug Bowles gave a very transparent press conference. Who's the president of Indianapolis. He gave a fabulous, very transparent press conference. They levied some very hefty penalties against them, as they should. I also kind of felt they should have probably just been in last chance qualifying, but that's just me. Suspended some team members. And for me, my thing is this is more on your technical inspection team, is people are kind of up in arms. For me, this says that your inspection process is not as robust as it should be. This is a miss on inspection. And some of Team Penske, I think they said, they were like, oh, well, it didn't have that benefit, or other people are claiming it didn't have benefit. Teams wouldn't do it if it didn't benefit them for some reason.
That's right,
have an on-track benefit, right? That's the other big argument here. And so this is really like a big miss on IndyCar inspection in themselves versus, like, I think Fox watching the hen house of it all, honestly, but that's my take. It's probably a little hot of a take, so a lot of people are like, Penske needs to sell, like pitchforks are up and stuff. But I think it literally just says your inspection process is not robust. And so now you need to go look at your inspection process and make sure that you are inspecting and catching things like this, and looking at your processes to make sure that you do catch things that teams are doing that might be suspicious, because this has apparently been in on the cars at least for a year.
Yeah. Does Team Penske have a history of things like this?
Yeah, they do.
As a leading question.
Yes, Team Penske does. If everybody recalls, they were involved in Push to Pass Gate last year. And I mean, you can go all the way back, and Team
Yeah.
Penske is in the middle of quite a few different debatable IndyCar things. But the big one, obviously, also Push to Pass Gate last year. And now the attenuator body seam in IndyCar. But it's the name of the game. If I know it's not getting checked, hell yeah, I'm going to try, right? So worst that can happen, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that with Yost Capito during the last
Yeah.
episode, right? Was, we said if you're not, what did we say? We said if you're not cheating, you're not trying, or something like that.
Yeah,
But to
essentially.
which he kind of pushed back on a little bit. But I think that what we're trying to say is that you push the limits. And even he said that,
Yes.
right? Whether
Yes.
you're in Formula One, you're in IndyCar, NASCAR, whatever, you push the limits. And in this
Yes.
case, apparently it's so black and white. I'm not an expert on the IndyCar regulations,
Yes.
or as knowledgeable as you are, but apparently this one is very clearly black and white.
Yes.
And so you would not fill in the seam unless you were intending to do something like you said. So, and
Yeah.
from an aerodynamic standpoint, I mean, 100%. We see this in Formula One. They fill the seams with tape, or they cover the
Yep.
seams with
With
tape on the
helicopter
body
tape.
panels. Exactly. So you want as smooth a surface as possible with little to no disruption, because of the fact that as the air is moving over surface, if it encounters any sort of a discontinuity, change in geometry, you're going to then create a small amount of drag in that localized area. But more importantly, you're going to trip the boundary layer, and that boundary layer now is going to become chaotic and disruptive. And if you have any downforce generating elements downstream of that, that's not an ideal situation for generating load. So from that standpoint, you want to keep the flow attached and nice and orderly,
Yep.
as orderly as possible. So this is why you smooth the seams. So anybody that says
exactly.
it doesn't matter, honestly, is not paying attention.
Yep. It fully matters. It's a
Yeah, it
huge
doesn't
thing.
matter. Like you
So,
said, you wouldn't
yeah.
do it if it didn't matter. I mean,
Exactly. Yeah. Just for your reference, that section of the section of the regulations that they are found to be violating basically says parts that can be modified and not modified. It's like 14.7.8.6 or something like that off the top of my head. And the attenuator is not on the list of parts that are allowed to be modified. So that's what they were found to
there you go.
be in violation.
Spec series.
Essentially. So there you go. Yeah. Spec series.
So for our Formula One friends, when everybody gets
Yes.
upset about teams innovating and doing things, the alternative to that is a spec series. And in the spec series, when you then try and eke out all these little small things that you can eke out to try to differentiate yourself or make yourself just a little bit better than everybody else, you still get these kinds of dramatic sequences and events. So I like the innovation. I think it's great.
I do too. It's cheeky.
Yep.
Oh yeah, it's half the fun. It makes you think outside the box in ways that you normally wouldn't think to find performance, even in NASCAR.
Absolutely.
Same thing. So,
and speaking of innovation, Molly, should we get into the Imola updates?
I think so, because there was a lot of updates in Imola.
Absolutely, yeah. We had the long-awaited, anticipated. Maybe Dr. Obbs was pumping this for a few weeks before it came out. The Red Bull update, the Imola update. Ching, it's here. Yes. Honestly, a little bit of the here comes the garbage truck. Great. We're going to hear that.
I can't hear it.
Okay. Good. So whenever the update package came, the update package was sort of preemptively rolled out a little bit there in Imola when they rolled out the Imola in Miami whenever they rolled out the new floor. Exactly. So we got the new floor in Miami, which was part of the big update package. So it was originally going to be a part of the Imola package, but they went ahead and brought the floor early. Why would you do that? You do that because you want to generate as much data as you can, so that when it comes time to optimizing your setup for Imola with the rest of your bits and bobs, you've characterized that particular update element as well as you can in your simulator and everything that's there to be able to give yourself the best chance, even though they mudded it on Friday. But that's another point. We'll get that later. So what did Red Bull have? Red Bull had a new mid-wing, which was, I think, the most noticeable thing, a la the McLaren.
I was going to say it almost looked a little Mercedes too, but it looked very McLaren.
Well, let's give Mercedes their due. With the W13, they first introduced the Cis wing. And the Cis wing was the thing that needed to cover the side impact structure, the upper side impact structure. Yes. But they turned it into a kind of downwashing element. And although it's not really doing the exact same thing as these other mid-wings are doing, it is sort of doing it in essence that it's like manipulating the air that's going to be interacting with the floor top deck. So that was the mid-wing that they provided. But interestingly enough, the edge of the wing, where typically you would form a small little tip vortex, they covered with the wing stay, the wing mirror stay. So that was an interesting bit, but I think McLaren was already doing that.
They were. So that was very McLaren to me.
Yeah. And then they modified the rear inlet and exit brake ducts. And there's been a lot of conversation about brakes and, how do we more efficiently cool the brakes? Is anybody doing any funny things? Which we'll talk about that also later. So stay tuned on that. But
who's got some interesting sauce?
That's right. Yeah. But the interesting bit about this, and I think we've talked about this, Molly, is that in the performance update, in the update table that the FIA rolls out on the Friday before practice, you don't have to report anything that you cannot visually see. That's an aerodynamic surface you cannot visually see, which means with the duct changing, they could have changed the whole internals to the brake cooling and they would not have to.
Yeah, exactly. So there's probably more there.
Yeah, so there's probably more there. We might see maybe before the next race when they've got the cake tins off. We might be able to do a side by side. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Savi, where are you?
Yeah. So Aston Martin now also had a big update package.
Yeah. Wow.
Go ahead.
What a quality for them based on that, right? They had quite a surprising performance all weekend.
Absolutely. The seems like the update package worked, especially in qualifying. Yeah. The qualifying performance was really good, but they came with a major kit. So they had brand new floor, brand new floor fences, brand new edge wing, brand new diffuser. I mean, all these things make sense. We've talked about that before. It all works together. But then interestingly, they also came with a new engine cover, but it was mostly, and it's kind of weird. Like they're calling, okay, soapbox moment. When they list these updates, and Red Bull did the same thing. When they listed the mid-wing, they classified it as rear coke body. As the change volume, but it's not. When you look in the regulation volume, that volume sets that is further back. Unless they changed something in the regulation volumes, that was always SPOD. SPOD was the regulation volume for that one. So I'm a little confused why they're classifying.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, and we don't always get to see those either, which is kind of annoying.
Yeah, one of those little nerdy engineering things that you pick up on that annoys the heck out of you.
Keep your naming consistent.
Yes, exactly. But really, realistically, what they did was on the side of the side pod, kind of, they've got that deep water slide that goes down through the central section. They sort of raised it a bit on the side.
Yeah.
And I think they're probably just trying to control maybe the mid front tire wake a little bit better.
Yeah.
With that. So
it didn't seem like any big philosophy change. It was like hey, we want to tweak how
the floor is drastically different though, so I think that's the biggest. That's the big one for them, definitely.
I think that's still where the most margin is to be found, right, in the floor.
Yeah. Oh, 1,000%. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Teams have been working a lot on the floor edge wings continuously throughout the year. They did it last year as well. I still think this is an area where teams are really optimizing their floor performance because the influence that the floor edge wing has on overall floor performance is quite big. It can influence, basically rear structures that go into the diffuser, a floor edge wing for powering up and filling kind of some of the void space in the diffuser, but also bringing some rotation into the diffuser, which is naturally there as well for like better mixing. And then, I hate the word seal when people say seal the floors, but it's just like discouraging sort of that inwash that ends up, robbing you of a bit of load in the floor. So you kind of create structures to help keep the sides healthy.
Yeah.
Right. Now, Mercedes, should we talk about Mercedes?
Yeah,
let's talk
definitely.
About Mercedes.
I think they had an interesting package as well I think there was some suspension changes amongst front wing with a different fourth element shape. Was it less flexy. I don't know. And they changed the rear engine cover too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They did some unique things. You know, the top four out of the top four, when it came to the A-arm junctions on the front suspension, like where the wishbones intersect with the front bodywork along the nose and the chassis. That junction, I've posted about this quite a bit, is very important because, like an airplane wing, how an airplane wing goes into a fuselage, you can reduce the amount of drag at this junction by making a nice profiled sort of shape. And Mercedes was one of the only ones out of the top four that did not have an upwashing junction. So now they have it. So that's what they brought. They brought a little upwashing junction. So it works in tandem with the front wing to help sort of upwash along this junction interface the flow and help with, you know, reduction of some losses. But you're right. The new front wing, there was a little bit of change in the nose. The nose looks almost like somebody punched it in the face, and like it kind of flattened out a little bit and got a bit bigger on the very front of it. Probably just to create a bit of localized pressure to kind of help distribute the air over the elements on either side of it. But in this case, the fourth element is different, and people are speculating that maybe this is Mercedes bringing their post-Spain front wing earlier, and it's got a little bit less flexibility because, you know, many people have said, hey, Mercedes have probably the most flexible front.
Yeah, that is fair. That's a good point. I didn't think about that. But that could be they pulled it ahead and they're trying to get it kind of their head wrapped around it, right?
Yeah, so maybe they're trying to get that understood a little bit before then it really comes into full effect in Spain. Trying to understand how to dial their car, how, you know, performance of it with a more stable front wing. As we know, George was kind of complaining a bit about tire degradation. Qualifying was okay for Mercedes. I mean, George was P4, right? I think, but he was like, he was a gap, or was he P3? No, he's P3, but he was a gap back from the top two. So there was like, was he 2/10 off? Anyway, but they did change the rear engine cover. The rear engine cover is interesting because what it does now is has a little bit less of a shorter downwashing shape. It's a little bit longer, kind of more pronounced, less downwashy. So probably just a little bit of flow optimization for them. But again, there's other people speculating that they brought a stiffer rear wing as well, possibly, even though it wasn't reported. And they think that this is all part of profiling or downwashing the air to the rear wing with this sort of less, flexy rear wing.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting as we see things take shape leading up to Spain. Because Spain's the third of the triple header, right?
Yeah, it is. So it's Monaco, then Spain. Yep. And Spain is the final one of the triple header. And it's going to be hot. It's going to be high deg. We assume it's going to be hot, Spain, in June by then.
The rain in Spain will be a pain.
Mainly falls on the plane.
Thank you.
Yeah, but it's just weird what things pop into our brains whenever somebody starts saying something.
Today's been a day of just straight intrusive thoughts too. Like I had my mouth.
Nice.
No filter, just say.
Yeah. We won't dig too much deeper into like what thoughts that have been there for today. So we'll just let that one slide a little bit.
I've just been unhinged as a sliding door. Like quite honestly, today is really where I've been at. So
nice.
I think yeah, it's kind of par for my course, but some days I'm just like, I don't even think, I just blurt.
Yeah.
So we're trying to keep the filter on for the pod today. I'm trying to be so hard.
Okay. Just blurt on this one. Are you ready? Qualifying. What were your impressions? Go.
My flappers were gassed.
as a Ferrari fan,
no
how were you
Ferrari feeling? Pain, quite honestly. No Ferrari in Q3. Both Astons in Q3. Like what?
And the Williams were up there too.
The Williams
and Astons.
Too, yeah.
If you would have told me before that race that Williams and Astons would outqualify the Ferraris, I'd have told you.
I would have laughed in your face. Quite honestly, I would have been like,
"What
"That's
happened?
a good joke."
Do we know what happened with the Ferraris? God. Why they didn't make it into Q3?
The package is terrible. The car is slow. Is a big thing. The car is not fast on one lap. I need to go back and watch it and actually see if like just Charles had poor prep or like listen to poor prep lap. But I mean, The car is not fast by any means. I don't know what they did. They had some track specific stuff too this weekend, but
Yeah.
I don't know what they did to this car. It's not only like kind of getting slower, but it seems to have a really narrow setup window too.
Yeah.
It's
Even worse.
not great. Yeah, it's not great.
I mean, there's a couple schools of thought. People have hypothesized, speculated on what's going on. So I
Yeah.
think what we do know is that Ferrari is working on an updated rear suspension. So there's a
Yes.
lot of kind of speculation being thrown at the fact that they can't run the car very low because the rear suspension can't tolerate it. It basically it's too soft, and which is why when they do run it low, they end up wearing the plank out at the rear because the suspension is not right. So rumor is that there is a new suspension which is in the tunnel right now that's going through some final tweaks.
Cool.
So that is supposed to fix some of the problems, allow them to run lower. The other bit is there's been some discussions around like the powertrain. So the rear part of the powertrain where the trans cassette is something about, okay, you're gonna have to help me here, Molly. So I think that the trans cassette, the housing, is a structural member as part of the rear suspension, right? Everything in the rear suspension is sort of anchored to the rear cassette.
I believe
I
so, yes.
I thought. Huh?
Yep.
Yeah.
I believe so.
So apparently this is the speculation is this is also part of the weakness of the rear suspension. Is that however this was designed in such a way that like the structural integrity of this whole transmission housing and everything that's back there and how it intersects with the already not optimized rear suspension is a problem, and this is what doesn't allow them to run the car low and doesn't allow them to optimize the setup.
Yeah.
This is what we're hearing.
Yes.
Are you checking?
I'm checking.
Hang on, we are checking.
That's very Ferrari of me. It was more so just I wanted to confirm that the cassette is allowed within restrictions and modifications based on those rumors because
like it's not homologated, for instance, or something.
Yeah, they would have to go back through gearbox homologation, which technically it's part of what's frozen.
And rear crash tests as well, maybe because it's part of the rear crash structure.
Yeah, but it's a matter of are they even going to be allowed if they change the cassette, which I don't think they're allowed to unless it's within restrictions, and the FIA said they could. They are working around the existing cassette with the new suspension then. Because unless the FIA said they could rehomologate the rear cassette, I do believe the cassette itself is frozen unless you can make reliability or safety changes that do not improve performance in the cassette. Is the regulation, I believe, is any modification to the cassette must not be for a performance advantage or something. So
could you argue that that would be a reliability improvement if it was maybe?
I mean,
this is interesting.
They've struggled on. I'm gonna go a little pedals here for a moment. Ferrari's had shit torque delivery, so Ferrari's had kind of shit torque delivery. So I mean, you could argue that it is reliability.
Yeah.
I mean, you could make a case. I don't know if the FIA would say, okay, I don't know if the cassette is getting modified. It's just something to keep in mind as they are working in and around the gearbox.
Yeah. Definitely something to look at, but something probably that we should, I'll go investigate as well. I want to get my story straight on the rumor around the cassette. And then maybe we'll issue some comments on that later.
We would have maybe heard if the FIA granted.
Yeah, I would have thought so too.
That, right?
Yeah. So we'll go study that one a bit further, but qualifying, interesting. Yes. But qualifying was very interesting. So yeah, like we talked about, the Ferraris didn't make Q3. That was probably the most shocking thing at first. And then after that was, I think for me, Lando Norris being out qualified by his teammate Oscar Piastri again.
Yes.
Maybe it lends a little bit of credence or validity to people that are saying that Lando is struggling with the car in qualifying because is a bit too unstable for him. And Piastri seems to have his head around it. What else? Right, Max P2, another, I would say, amazing turnaround by Red Bull. Nowhere on Friday. Yeah,
Red Bull doing Red Bull things.
Max was ticked on Friday, and then the Poor Simulator team absolutely pulling all-nighters and pulling a rabbit out of a hat. Got a great setup on Saturday. Max found his way to P2. Poor Yuki bend it in qualifying, which is not good. Probably not good for his performance.
Scary. Did you see the photos of the head position after impact?
I did not.
Oh my god. It basically looked like he was not wearing a Hans device. His head position was so far forward. Yeah. I was shocked. I was like, wow. That like zoomed in and was like, good God. It's as he kind of clips the fence and comes down, the head position is really far forward. And I was like, my God. That's a lot of head movement. And so I'm like, Han's not tight. Like, what was going on there? But it was a shocking crash. And I'm very used to series in which there are methods to not allow a car to go over. So I was like, when the car went up and over like that, because it's, I mean, NASCAR, we've got diffuser flaps, roof flaps. IndyCar's got a flap built into the rear wing that'll open up. So, and then they have the underwing and some features to help prevent blowovers. And so I was very shocked to see an F1 car go up and over, because I feel like we rarely see a car go up and over in F1 with this rule set.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. The last one was maybe
Zhou and Silverstone.
And I wonder though if I can't remember exactly, but I know he went into the gravel there at turn 1, and I think he was completely sideways, and I wonder if it was because the tires dug into the gravel that launched him, or if he got air underneath. Like, was it a takeoff scenario, like air underneath, or what?
The NASCAR takeoffs, where sorry, I'm snacking. Where that's where like air gets underneath and just the NASCAR Cup cars just take off, or you hit some grass and the tire digs in, and then you get the air under the car, and the car is just you're on for it at that point. But
that's right.
I was quite shocked to see a car go up and over. I was glad that he was okay though, especially given the photo of the head position I saw. I'll send that to you so you can see that. Quite shocking. I mean, the team did a bang up job rebuilding. It was a new chassis, I believe, as well. They rolled out for him, and he started from the pit lane, and I think he had a pretty productive day. In terms of recovery.
Made it in the points, P10.
Yeah.
Good recovery. I think, the Aston Martins certainly had an excellent qualifying, but for them, the race was different. They were great on one lap. The performance update ended up finding them a lot of pace, but then it wasn't until they got in the race that they started realizing we were just chewing tires up.
Yep.
And so they were not able to push in the race, which is a interesting thing. There's been a few teams that have had that issue. They find some peak performance on one lap, but they're not able to survive during a race.
Nope, it was Ferrari for a long time too. So it seems to be the common kind of symptom of you find a bunch of performance and at what cost, and it is the cost of tire deg, and then to balance that, you lose whatever the gain was. So,
but it appears like, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go first. We're probably going to say the same thing.
I was going to say, but it appears like Williams seems to have cracked the code a little bit. They are, positively in position of P6, P6 and Sainz P6, Albon P7. I don't think this is a one-trick pony anymore, Molly. I don't think this is like a flash in the pan thing where, Williams just put it all together. I think they're like consistently performing now behind the top 4 teams. They seem to be extracting pace. The car seems a lot better. I mean, this is really exciting, honestly, if you're a Williams fan, which I'm a closet Williams fan of.
Yeah, I know. You're having a great time.
I'm loving this. I mean, it's getting a little spicy, I think, between maybe Alex and Carlos a little bit, just in certain things that are going on or whatever. But like, you've got 2 strong drivers there. You've got a team that seems to have turned it around. A car that's performing for the most part seems well balanced. Really good signs for Williams.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I would love another data point on this Aston before I draw full judgment. And I kind of hate that Monaco might not be a good point for that.
No. Oh, gosh.
So I think Spain will be the next judgment point I have for them in that upgrade.
I think so. And especially because Spain is a high deg track.
Yeah.
It will be, look, Red Bull as well. I know from the race, they qualified well, and in the race, the deg looked excellent. But jury's still out Monaco, as you said, not going to be a good judge, good
No.
indication of what's going on. Probably Spain will be our best for
Yeah.
many different teams.
Yeah.
And that's
I
when we have
mean,
the front wing regulation come out,
yeah,
right?
I
The
was just
TD.
about to
So,
say, do we
man,
want to get into TDs on that note?
yeah.
And kind of get into
Well, let's
that
talk
because I
about the
think,
race. Let's talk about the race, I
yeah,
guess,
true.
first.
Yeah, we're
And
getting
then we'll
ahead of
get into the
ourselves.
TDs.
We're just so
Yeah, it's
excited
okay.
by
But
TDs.
yeah, but there's definitely things to point out about the TDs. What was your impressions on the race, Molly?
The C6 was there, but then it was actually
Yeah.
like a really good Imola. I have kind of shit talked Imola
Yeah.
before, in that it's very professional and it's been kind of a snooze. This was a fabulous Imola. Great strategy calls, safety car impacts. Like, it was a fabulous race. I don't know what you thought.
Yeah, we had some tire offsets from the start. You had
Yeah.
primarily
Yeah.
the front teams running the mediums, a bunch of teams in the back
The
running the hards.
Let me look at my notes, because I think the Astons were running used mediums again.
Well, like 1 lap scrubbed
Three
mediums,
lap
like they usually
scrubs.
do.
They did
3 lap scrubs.
3 lap scrub mediums on the Astons.
Oh wow, interesting. That
Yeah,
seems to be their philosophy. I think I
they
can't
do
remember if
really
it
like
was.
that. They've been doing
Yeah, I
it for a
can't remember if
while.
it was you that said it or it was part of something that we had investigated after one of our shows. But like, apparently on the in the paddock, there's a whole argument about the philosophy of this. Some teams strongly
Yep.
believe that you need to scrub in tires, that new ones are
Yep.
not as good, and others are
Get
like,
the
no
mold
way, the
release
news are the
agent
best. So,
off and get a
yeah,
heat cycle in them. Yeah, there's a big
exactly.
Mercedes will do it sometimes, and Aston will do it sometimes. Well,
Yeah.
Aston does it pretty much all the time, but Mercedes will do it here and there. But Aston, pretty much, I can guarantee you, they will always run at least a 1 lap cycle tire. And I was surprised to see a 3 lap cycled medium to start the race.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I think most everybody knew that speaking of the C6, I think most everybody knew that the C6 was not really going to be a race tire. It just was not surviving. I mean, heck, there was even people that ran the mediums competitively in qualifying, right? Because they could not get the softs to hang on for a full lap.
Yep. Yeah, it was like,
So,
the C6 was there. She had a great time. I don't know what she did.
well, she's going to be back in Monaco.
I know.
Because but what I heard is that the C6 was really intended for Monaco. Like somebody had said that. Yeah, that they when they designed it, they really designed it for grip in Monaco, but also for as potentially like a race tire, a tire that you could race on but would degrade faster but would be very quick in like Monaco terms, which I don't know. Let's see.
Yeah.
What's
the
two
mandatory stops in Monaco now?
Yes.
2. So.
Yep. And you have to run 2 different tires like usual, or do you have to run 3 different compounds now?
I actually don't know. New regulation. I just know you have to make 2 stops.
Okay, we'll have to look that up to see. I seem to recall something about potentially you have to run 3 different compounds, possibly, which would mean you have to run a soft, a medium, and a hard.
Yeah.
And if it's the C6, then
let's go.
That should be interesting.
It means everybody will probably start the race on the C6 then, is what'll happen, if I had to guess. If you have to do that, everybody will start the race on the C6. And then I think you'll see divergence of medium to hard at that point.
Unless you're in the back. If you're in the back, if you don't have a good qualifying, or let's say you got a mixed up grid because somebody didn't qualify, or it rains during qualifying but it's a dry race, now you got a really interesting scenario, because if you're in the back, you can afford to start on a harder compound. And then there's a lot of strategic things in there, because I think the undercut is quite powerful in Monaco, right?
It is. The undercut has always kind of been pretty powerful.
Yeah. So then you could get yourself in a position where you could slap a set of soft compound tires on there, knock out some super fast laps, and undercut somebody, get some track position, and then switch to your finishing tire possibly. So
exactly.
It's going to be an interesting one. I would like to think that this is going to be fun. Yeah.
I hope so. I always keep my fingers crossed that Monaco will one year be fun. I did enjoy last year because we broke the curse, but at what cost did it come for this year?
Yeah.
So we'll see. Monaco is one of those that it's a classic. I give it shit, but it's Monaco. So
yeah. Well, you definitely we started talking a little bit about Monaco, but we should probably finish our thoughts on Imola from the standpoint of like you said, I fully agree with you, Molly. I think this is a better race. I'm gonna hit you with a question though, okay? Do you think that Imola was good because we had the VSC and the safety car? like at that point, I think Max was gapping and he was out running away with it. And then the VSC was very timely for Max this time, finally. He got a good, it was not good for Lando because, Piastri made a super early stop. That was mistake number one. And then it wasn't good for Lando because Lando stopped. So it created the gap to be a little bit bigger than it was. But if there was no VSC and no safety car, would this have been a snoozer, or what do you think?
I think it wouldn't have been as exciting as it was. I don't think it would have been a total snooze because you had tire fall off and there was some tire strategy at play for sure and some split strategies, but I don't think it would have been as exciting as it was had we not had VSCs and SCs.
I think the SC definitely, because like when the SC came out, I think Max was like 18 seconds ahead of Lando.
Yeah, Max was putting
and I don't
gaps in the field.
And there really wasn't any there really wasn't any like tire offset things that would have caused Lando to like quickly catch Max.
No, it would have kind of just been like, did Max have a bad stop or something, like which we know Red Bull always cranking out good stops. So
credit to them. Hey, they had some really good stops this race. I think previous races they had struggled a little bit. Now, granted, there was a couple penalty situations where they couldn't touch the car, and as we know from our friend Callum, that this is not, it does not make it easier when you're starting from a stop position.
Static.
Exactly, static. Yeah. So right. So yeah, the race was good. Red Bull had some great pace. When Lando, after the safety car incident, when okay, we should talk about this. What do you think about like Piastri and Norris? So Lando and Oscar not switching positions right away because Oscar Piastri did not pit. Lando did pit. Lando had fresh tires. Oscar had used tires. So he was out in front of Lando after Lando's pit stop, and the team let him race. They did not, okay, sorry. My brain's going a million miles an hour because I'm so excited about this. Molly, did they need to do team orders? And had they done team orders and Lando was in front of Oscar, would he have been able to keep up with Max?
This is what happens when a team does not have a number one driver.
Yeah, we talked about this. Yep.
We've talked about this ad nauseum. We had some great insight from Yost, and I think we are well past the point of McLaren really needs to put a foot down, unfortunately, because even if Lando could not have hung with Max or chewed into the gap of Max, and I cannot believe I'm about to say this, you have to give your car with a better chance a try, right? And by having Oscar there, it takes away from that. By having him have to fight, we now are letting the gap get bigger because the dirty air effect, I have to get around my teammate and all of that good stuff. We see it in the Cup Series all the time. And so it's one of those things that he should, if he wanted a shot, they should have let him by to see what the pace looked like. They could have easily given Oscar that spot back or figured out a way to switch it back. But I think this is once again the byproduct of this is what happens when a team has made it very clear they will not prioritize one over the other, and it is going to shoot them in the foot over and over again.
Yeah.
They want their cake and they want to eat it too, and they cannot in these situations.
Nope, cannot. I fully agree with you. I think in a situation like this where you've got where you got one driver with a tire advantage. This is one tire with a driver advantage. Actually, honestly, this is more of a tire series, so that may be true. Actually, like the tires may be driving the driver.
That's fair.
But basically, so what Stella said is he said, look, they're free to race. If Lando had so much more pace, if he could have kept up with Max, he would have passed Piastri easily. He would have passed Oscar Piastri.
That's a fair statement.
Yeah, but I don't totally agree because of the fact that because of the dirty air situation. This is exactly it.
That was going to be the butt. The big butt here is.
Yeah, he's gonna use up his tires fighting with his teammate. His teammate's not gonna have the same performance. It's gonna hold Lando up and on a track where it's very difficult to pass. And now Lando's gonna use up tires to get past Oscar. And by the time that he is free and clear, now Max is 6 seconds up the road. although Lando has clean air at that point, because I think most people feel like 2 to 2.5 seconds behind a car is
Mm-hmm.
really the window of like dirty air influence. So when you're outside of that 2 to 2.5 seconds, then you're not necessarily as negatively impacted by the dirty air as the car in front of you. In
Yeah.
fact, you actually get a little bit of the positive toe still, but not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily in the corners, the influence of the dirty wake. And so and Lando still couldn't catch Max after that. But I believe that if they would have swapped early, now granted, it would have been very difficult to do because they put themselves at threat immediately that Oscar could also get passed by whoever was behind Lando when that happened.
Yeah.
But you could strategically do this, and then maybe by then the gap is, uh, you know, a second and a half by then, because I mean Max took off away from Oscar very quickly, but if you switch early, maybe by the time Lando is there, the gap's like a second and a half. I think it's second and a half in one better sector than the Red Bull. You could have eaten into that and potentially gotten close to DRS. The minute you get DRS, now I think you can
Mm-hmm.
stay close, and I think you
Yeah.
can fight, and you can potentially try to cause the guy who doesn't make many mistakes to make a mistake.
Yeah.
I think McLaren fumbled the bag. That's just me.
I
I don't
agree.
think
They're
they
just
give
gonna
themselves
keep
a chance.
they're just gonna keep shooting themselves in the foot, and they're gonna fumble these opportunities, and it's going to be their downfall. We've talked about this before, where if Max can get a lead or Max has a car under him, Max is gonna do Max things, and it's ultimately gonna be their downfall. Once he's up there and running well, which we said at the beginning of the season, and I think we're starting to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to like caveat that comment by my comment by saying that um, I really do respect the fact that they let their drivers race, because like
Oh,
I know we
same.
want to see racing. I just think strategically it was the wrong move.
I agree. I think it was the
Yeah.
wrong move. I'm totally here for them letting their drivers race because at my core, I'm a purist. I don't like team orders. I don't want to have to deal with team orders. I come out of series where team orders are not allowed. There's
Yeah.
some manufacturer fuck all, but like that's a different story. But I come out of a series where you want your spot, you're going to race for it. And so I'm a
Yeah.
bit of a purist and I like that. But at the same time, understanding the landscape of Formula One and how important points are and the dirty air implications, I think that it was dumb. I don't agree.
Yeah. Yeah. So good good discussion on the race. Should we switch
Yeah,
to the technical directives that came after
I
the
think
race?
so. Finally, yeah, you've got me
Yeah.
for another little bit here, and I think that's really the meat and potatoes of what we're looking towards now. We hinted at it. Is that post race we found out that there were a couple technical directives, right, Ops?
That's right. Yeah. So apparently 3 technical directives were presented to the teams in Imola.
Mm-hmm.
One of these technical directives will not take effect actually until Canada, is what we're hearing now. So the
Yes.
first technical
Yeah.
directive is technical directive 6A. So all of these technical directives are basically, you can think of them as like addendums to the regulations. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, or appendices. No, because there's appendices. So they're like addendums. So basically, here's what the regulations say. Here's how we interpret it. You can do this. You cannot do this. These will come up because teams will ask for clarifications. Teams will present designs and ask the FIA if this is within their interpretation of the regulations before they put them on the car. Those are things
Mm-hmm.
that can trigger these TDs, and apparently these TDs were triggered by that and not necessarily by
Mm.
anything that teams were doing. TD6 is relating to the wheel bodywork, which if you go into
Okay.
the regulations, the regulation volume called the wheel bodywork volume is everything that encompasses that entire brake area. So basically, even though it's called wheel, it's not really the wheel.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
includes the keg 10 and everything under it. So,
Yep.
um, and it's all about tire treatment. You cannot cool the tires with any water agents. That pretty much rules
Mm-hmm.
out phase changing materials. You really just have to use air to be able to cool the brakes. And this was a
Yeah.
clarification of that.
Mm-hmm.
TD39 is for skid block designs. We're talking about skid blocks again. As everybody
Mm-hmm.
knows, teams get They get disqualified if they wear down their skid blocks past the limits, which means they're running the cars too low, which is where all the performance is. And this is effectively clarifying that, the way for measuring and post-race scrutineering the skid block wear, there's not little tricks and tweaks and things that you can do in the design that makes it to where now they can't actually measure the true wear.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third one apparently is a TD, which is on front bloody. Oh my gosh, I cannot talk today. Front floor bodywork flexibility tests, and it's supposedly just a minor thing. So like just clarifying a bit of flexibility, testing on flexible aero for the front bodywork, which is effectively going to be like if you think about for the front floor. So if you think about like where the outer fence is and everything that comes to like where that first curl is on the front of most of these floors that then goes into the floor edge wing, that's sort of the front floor bodywork.
That makes sense.
What do we think about this? Do we believe that, first of all, as what people are saying, there were no teams affected by this. The performance was not in Imola was not affected by any of these TDs, and that these were just clarifications? Or do we think that there's something more sinister?
I'm going to sit here, I'm going to get on my soapbox, and I'm going to kindly remind everybody that there are kind of three main reasons that something like this gets rolled out during mid-season. There was somebody doing something that they were not supposed to be doing, found via team or scrutineering, and the FIA needs to say, oh, fuck, we can't allow that. We got to fix that. That's not okay. That's not in the spirit of the regulations. 2, a team inquired on something, and this is a reactive thing from the FIA to say, oh, we didn't think about it like that, and we don't want it to be like that. We're not okay with that. Let's not do that. Let's put that to bed. You can't do that. And we're going to close the loophole with a TD so that no other teams can come and try and figure this out as well, because science only has so many answers. And then 3, I would say, is they realize, oh, fuck, we've left a door open and they need to fix something. So like they themselves think that something needs to change versus whatever they're seeing. So it's one of the things that it can be triggered by a number of things. I do think that a couple of these are probably things that teams maybe have tried or inquired on. I think the skid might be more of a like, hey, we want to do this on our skid. That one, I think it could also be a scrutineering find because of how much they're checking, and we have had some skid penalties and DQs so far. The tire thing and the tire prep and the water in the tires of it all. I think I don't know if that's an inquiry or teams have just continued to pull on the shirt sleeve of the FIA and be like, hey, until the FIA finally acted on it. I don't know. But I think it's a mix of things. I think stuff like this does not just happen for willy-nilly. The series decides, oh, hee hee ha ha, let's put a TD out, right?
Yeah. I think probably the first one, I think especially is, and I also think the third one has to do with Red Bull pushing with the FIA to get clarifications on things. I think the first one relating to tire treatments is Red Bull's way of pushing with the FIA to get clarifications to close up loopholes.
Yeah.
And
close up
I
the
think
potential for water in the tires of it all, because I think that's what that was really reading between the lines to me of either they have found or feel they have proof of water in tires, or they just want it put to bed in whatever way they can because they feel it's maybe either still happening or important enough.
And I think the third one, because there was a lot of speculation from Red Bull and Ferrari, to be fair, around bodywork flexibility, not just front wing and rear wing. And there was some kind of there was some messaging put out there that generalized the whole flexi aero topic from the Red Bull side. And I think that they're also thinking there's other elements that are being exploited as well. So this is why I think the third is also something that came potentially from Red Bull's pushing. So let's see. I know there's people out there that say that McLaren's degradation, to be fair, Oscar Piastri degged out much sooner than Max on that first stint. and he committed by pitting early. He committed to that two-stop strategy. Same with George Russell. And that was super surprising for me. Although Lando didn't. Lando could go much further on his tires. So maybe that completely, invalidates the whole theory that potentially something might have impacted McLaren. But it's an interesting thing to think about. Like, either this is just coincidental and they didn't nail the setup and they didn't get the window right, or there was something to it,
Yeah. I'm a nothing's coincidental person, but that's just me. Yeah. One time it's a coincidence, twice, no, 3 times it's fact, or whatever that quote is, right?
Yeah. So I think that was Imola. What do we think about? Well, we have talked about a bit about Monaco. Anything else to add on Monaco? Any thoughts on the upcoming race? What can we look for?
No, I'm excited to see how this mandatory stop stuff is going to play out. And how it's going to affect what's normally a pretty processional race. Kind of intrigued. So I think that's really what I'm looking forward to. And then I think personally, just my excitement's more geared towards the Indy 500, and everybody should go watch that next weekend.
Yes, definitely go watch that. There's the inaugural, or not inaugural, but it is the yearly conflict that exists in my brain of watching Monaco or watching the Indy 500.
It's the last one.
It is the last one? Who's changing the schedule?
Monaco.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. This will be the last time they conflict, I believe it is.
Okay,
so
good.
This is the last time. I know, it's always a good day of racing. I'm worried it's going to rain on Sunday again, so I might only get Monaco and the Coke 600, but that's literally like a day of race cars where it's like, get up, watch Monaco, by the time Monaco's done, it's getting close for Indy 500 time, usually time for a nice coffee, go park my butt by the pool for a little while, come back in right when they do, back home again in Indiana, watch the 500, and then by the time the 500's done, you have a little bit of time to recoup, and then you watch the 600 for Indy cars, or for NASCAR, and we have Kyle Larson doing the double again. So everybody keep an eye on that.
So get in the helicopter and fly. Yeah.
It's shocking how little coverage that's getting this year and how like almost forgotten it is that Kyle Larson's attempting the double amongst everything else. So I'll be keeping an eye on that for sure too. But it's a day of racing. You can't say no. It's a day full of race cars, right?
Yeah.
It's a great way to spend your Memorial Day weekend.
Definitely. It's gonna be awesome for sure. I'll be out of town probably at my in-laws, so I'm just going to ask for forgiveness when I sit in front of the television all day.
It'll be fine. Yeah, I'm not parking about relax, I think.
But Monaco, I think, I'm with you. I'm looking forward to see how the mandatory pit stops go. I'm also looking forward to seeing how Ferrari does. Charles Leclerc won last year. It was an amazing story. I still think that car is well suited for Monaco. However, the issues with the rear suspension, Monaco is not the smoothest track. It is bumpy. It does require you to raise the rear ride height.
Yeah.
And I think their biggest issue is that when they raise the rear now, because of these issues, the car just completely falls out of the performance window. Yep. So I'm feeling like this is a year where they're just not going to be able to really extract the potential from the car because of that limitation.
And I've seen a lot of people who are like, oh, look to see who was running higher in Imola because of the TDs. And I think that Monaco is probably going to false positive a lot of people on this impact for the skid specifically, I would say, because it is bumpy and because you're trying to accommodate for some of that. Teams are potentially going to run a little bit higher here. So I want to put a big old asterisk on Monaco. Don't use Monaco as your TD grade, as your TD this team is impacted, I would say. That's my soapbox.
Yeah, definitely. But I think probably McLaren will be strong in Monaco.
Where are they not
truly
strong?
Yeah, truly believe it. I mean, if they're able to regulate rear tire temps. Red Bull will be there, but honestly, I think if you had asked me, I think that the Mercedes will be in front of.
Actually, I think Mercedes will be the stronger.
I think Mercedes will be the stronger of the two. We could get an interesting little surprise, possibly from maybe the Aston Martins, possibly on single lap pace to find Fernando Alonso to find a nice grid position.
Was it the V carbs that really liked low speed as well? Like lower speed sections?
Yes. Yeah, the V
Yeah,
carbs
they could
seem
be
to
a.
do quite
I
good in
mean,
low speed corners.
Isaac Hadjar is putting in a freaking phenomenal, very quiet rookie season. I think that
I
could be a
know.
surprise. He loves Monaco. He's phenomenal at Monaco. He has that really famous moment where he almost clipped an F2 car, I think it was, in the tunnel, in a
Yeah, oh
blind spot
yeah,
and
he had that
reacted.
instant just.
That's him. Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
So I
exactly.
think maybe Isaac in V carb, or at least one or both V carbs, could put in a good position too and surprise us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good shout, Molly. I hadn't
Yeah.
thought about that. V carb could be the dark horse this weekend
Yeah.
to get
Who knows?
some strong points possibly. I think
Yeah.
Liam Lawson definitely needs it, but I'm with you.
Yep.
I think Isaac Hadjar is probably the stronger of the two drivers for sure. Has
At
certainly
least right
proved
now.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly
Yeah.
proved it in his performances so far. So, yeah, any
Yeah.
final points or thoughts or anything, Molly, before we sign
No,
off?
I'm ready for a weekend of racing. How about
Yeah,
you?
me too. Me too. Same
All
thing.
right.
Ready for a weekend of racing. Ready to get back into it.
Yeah.
Kids only have like a little bit of time left till school's out and summer
Gosh.
break begins. So we
Oh,
are
Lord.
quickly approaching the summer. It's almost here, which means also we'll have the summer break in Formula One, which will be
Yes.
upcoming,
Yay.
which will be a
Peace.
period of time of no races, which probably my soul needs the rest. But, the
You have
racing
no
fan in me
races,
doesn't.
but NASCAR doesn't stop, IndyCar doesn't stop, IMSA
Yeah.
doesn't stop. So
Watch
we'll fill
those
the gap.
for
We'll fill the
sure.
gap.
Definitely.
All
Definitely.
right. Want me to see us out?
Yes, please.
All right. Thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode of the Breaking Bias podcast. And as always, listening to Obs and I talk motorsports tech. Don't forget to like, rate, review, subscribe, and find us on all of your favorite podcasting platforms. We are on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube, along with anywhere your podcasts come in podcast form. So don't forget to hit us up there. And then we are also over on Twitter under Breaking Bias Pod, where we do just this. And if you like what Obs and I do, we do it in written form over there as well. So feel free to come hang out with us there as well. And we'll catch you on the next one.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. All right.
Good.
Yay.